In the heart of Stonebridge Maximum Security Prison, among murderers and lifelong criminals, was cell number 408, home to a man unlike any other inmate. His name was Elias Gray, a 28-year-old convicted hacker, sentenced to 15 years for infiltrating government networks and leaking classified documents. But what the world didn't know, what even the government hadn't realized, was that Elias had let himself be caught. To the guards, he was quiet, cooperative, and unervingly calm. He never caused trouble, followed the schedule, and made no enemies. But behind those unreadable eyes was a brain running calculations faster than any machine. Every hour, every interaction, every lock click, and guard rotation was recorded in his mental database. Stonebridge had become his new code to crack. On the surface, Elias lived like a model prisoner. He volunteered in the library, helped in the prison workshop, and occasionally gave chess lessons to bored guards. But everything he did had a deeper purpose. The workshop gave him access to wires, screws, and discarded electronics. The library connected him to books about behavioral psychology, surveillance systems, and architecture. Chess? That was just practice for real-life strategy. The only person who suspected anything unusual was Officer Langston, a veteran guard with 20 years of experience and a gut instinct that never failed him. "That guy's playing a game," Langston told the warden. "But I can't see the board." The warden laughed it off. "He's harmless. Just a geek who got in over his head." But Langston knew better. Elias wasn't just serving time, he was studying. Weeks turned into months. Elias mapped every hallway in his mind, memorized meal schedules, guard rotations, and camera blind spots. Every night, he would stare at the ceiling, mentally simulating scenarios like a game of chess. What if he pretended to be sick? What if he started a fight? What if he exploited the guards' daily routines? But Elias didn't want to escape the typical way. No digging, no climbing walls, no violence. He wanted to disappear, vanish without a trace. To do that, he needed one thing: control of the prison's internal network. In the workshop, he had been slowly collecting parts, copper wires from discarded toasters, small batteries, and even broken walkie-talkies. He had hidden his growing pile behind a loose panel under the workbench. Bit by bit, he built a crude but functional device, a homemade transmitter disguised inside a book cover he borrowed from the library. Elias also befriended Devin, a fellow inmate who worked in the prison's IT department under the pretense of being reformed. Devin was easy to manipulate, ambitious but insecure. Elias played the long game, dropping hints, sharing stories of past exploits, until Devin practically idolized him. "You're a legend, man," he whispered one night. "You could take over the world if you wanted to." Elias just smiled. "I don't want the world, Devin. I just want freedom." With Devin's help, Elias gained access to the prison's internal network using the device he built. Late one night, while most inmates slept and guards dozed off in their chairs, Elias tapped into the system and planted a virus, a ghost protocol that made subtle changes to prisoner records, log files, and surveillance footage. It didn't delete anything. That would raise alarms. Instead, it rewrote the data slowly, like erosion shaping a cliffside. Each day, Elias's digital footprint inside the prison got a little lighter. Footage was altered to occasionally show an empty cell where he slept. Meal logs were changed to reflect missed meals. Even biometric scans were subtly tampered with. To the system, Elias Gray was slowly disappearing, like a shadow fading under the sun. But one wrong move could ruin everything. One morning, Officer Langston stopped outside Elias's cell with a frown. "Funny thing," he said, tapping the bars. "Your name didn't show up on last night's head count. And yet, here you are." Elias tilted his head, feigning surprise. "Glitch in the system?" Langston stared at him for a long moment. "You ever play poker, Elias?" "Not really." "You should. You've got a hell of a poker face." Then, without another word, he walked off. Elias knew then, Langston was watching closely. He had to accelerate the plan. The final step was the exit. Every Friday afternoon, a delivery truck arrived with food and supplies. It stayed in the loading bay for exactly 20 minutes. Inside that truck, for a brief window, there were no cameras. Elias had already altered the delivery records for the upcoming Friday. According to the logs, inmate 408, Elias Gray, was to be transferred to solitary for a fabricated disciplinary issue. And when the headcount was done, the system would already confirm him missing from the general population. All he needed now was a perfect distraction. That night he slipped a small note to Devon. Friday, 2:15 p.m. Kitchen. Start the fire. Friday arrived with a cold, gray sky hanging over Stonebridge like a warning. Inside the prison, everything appeared routine, guards on shift, inmates going through their daily motions, and Elias sitting quietly at his workbench in the workshop, polishing a rusted wrench with deliberate focus. But under that calm surface, every second ticked like a bomb. At exactly 2:15 p.m., the fire alarm in the prison kitchen roared to life. Smoke billowed into the hallways as guards shouted commands and scrambled toward the source. Inmates in nearby blocks were locked down as protocol demanded, while a small evacuation was ordered near the kitchen and loading bay. Just as planned. In the chaos, Elias slipped out of the workshop wearing a stolen maintenance uniform, his face partially covered by a dust mask. No one questioned him. He looked like he belonged. He walked with calm, confident steps, passing two distracted guards arguing over whether the smoke was real or just steam. As he reached the service corridor leading to the loading bay, his heart rate barely shifted. He'd rehearsed this path 100 times in his mind. Every step, every sound, every possible interruption, he'd accounted for it. That's how a mastermind works. Not with speed. With certainty. The delivery truck stood in its usual spot, the back doors open, boxes stacked high. The driver was nowhere in sight, likely pulled away during the alarm. Elias climbed in silently and pulled the black tarp over himself, nestling between crates of canned goods and cleaning supplies. His forged transfer papers and altered system logs had already cleared him. On paper, he didn't exist anymore. Minutes later, the engine roared to life. The truck rolled forward, through the security gates. Past the perimeter. Past the towers. Past the world of prison bars and locked doors. He was free. At least, that's what he thought. Back inside the prison, Officer Langston stood in the control room, his eyes locked on the surveillance feed from earlier that day. Something about the kitchen fire felt too convenient. He rewound the footage and watched the smoke pour out. But then something odd caught his eye. Two guards in the hallway, talking. One of them had a maintenance uniform, but he couldn't remember any scheduled work during that hour. Zooming in, Langston froze the frame. He saw the man's eyes just above the dust mask. Elias Gray. Son of a... Langston turned to the warden. He's gone. The warden scoffed. What do you mean, gone? He's in solitary for that disciplinary thing, isn't he? Langston's face darkened. There was no disciplinary issue. That record's fake. He wrote himself out of this place. Sirens wailed through Stonebridge once again, but this time it wasn't a drill. Guards scrambled to checkpoints. The truck, now 10 miles out, received an emergency call from dispatch. Too late. When the truck was stopped and searched, there was no Elias. Just a uniform, a dust mask, and a small device emitting a signal jam, enough to block the GPS for a few critical minutes. He had bailed out at the first turn off the main road, vanishing into the industrial district on foot, blending into the city like vapor. Langston returned to Elias's now empty cell. It looked untouched. Clean bed. Neatly folded clothes. A worn chessboard sat on the desk, the pieces arranged mid-game. The black king lay on its side. A folded paper sat beneath it. Langston unfolded it slowly. In the days that followed, the prison scrambled to cover the escape. Official statements were vague. Investigations were launched. Devon was questioned, but Elias had never revealed enough to implicate him. Every trace of Elias in the system had been surgically removed. No photos, no video, no fingerprints. Just a growing legend. But Elias didn't run away to hide. He reappeared 6 months later, digitally. A data leak hit the news, exposing corruption within Stonebridge's administration. Financial records, guard misconduct, even secret experiments involving inmate behavior modification. All of it laid bare on the internet, signed off with a familiar digital signature. Mind over matter DXC. It was the name Elias once used in underground forums, years before his arrest. Only a handful of hackers ever knew the name. Now it was back, stronger, bolder, untouchable. Langston sat in his dimly lit office, reading the leak. He shook his head with a mix of admiration and frustration. He didn't just escape prison, he muttered. He turned it into his stage. Across the world, conspiracy theorists, activists, and internet communities hailed Elias as a modern-day phantom, a ghost in the system who outsmarted everything. But only a few truly understood the depth of his mind games. He wasn't just trying to escape a cell. He was proving a point, that control is an illusion and systems, no matter how secure, are only as strong as the mind guarding them. And Elias Gray? He was always 10 moves ahead.